Well, hello everyone. This is Tanja with My Two Cents for Change. And as I promised, I said we would be talking about parenting one on one. And as a parent, I'll let you know that I made a lot of mistakes. I wasn't the perfect parent, but I gave my children the love that I had. And many times, parenting is just basically passing on what you have inside. And if you're broken, guess what you're going to pass on to that child? Brokenness. Because children absorb that. They're like a sponge. Whether you intentionally teach them the lesson or whether they watch you being that example and you teach them what it is that you're doing or not doing, they pick it up anyway. They absorb it, and so whatever they absorb, when it's squeezed, that's what's coming out. So be mindful of that, parents. And if you need help, please, please, please get the help that you need. There are many, many therapists, counselors, uh, different avenues you can take to become a better individual, to get over your hurt so that you can become whole. And that's what we're all about. So I just want you to understand that it doesn't happen overnight. I made mistake after mistake after mistake. I was married 3 times. And guess who the common denominator was? Me. So that lets you know that God's grace and mercy, He allowed me to go through that. But I am a much better person. I've gotten the lessons because I got into my word. And yes, my children are all adults now, ages 26 to 36. And I have 2 grandsons, ages 11 and 13. But the wisdom that I have now, I'm able to pass it on to them, and they are really appreciating it. They're productive citizens, all living on their own. Do they make mistakes? Yes. Do I see residual effects of where I was when I had them and the mistakes that I was making at that time in them? Yes, but overall, the core of who God made me to be is in them. There's kindness, there's love, there's loyalty in their friendships. There's a lot of things that they have. They're very trusting, but they're very communicative, meaning that they know they can come talk to me, and they know that they can communicate their thoughts without me passing judgment. Now I'm gonna put my little 2 cents in because that's just who I am. They call me Madea. I'm like Tyler Perry's character on Madea. But I just believe in telling people the truth. Because if you have a friendship or you're a parent, you need to let them know what's really going on in the world. Don't give them this false sense of security, whereas, when they make a mistake or when they in a race, let me use that for an example. When people, now these parents want everybody to get medals, and that's not the real life. Some people are going to get positions that they're not going to get. Some people are going to win. That means you learn to fight harder. That doesn't make you a loser. You just encourage that child. Make that child feel important, and feel like they can conquer the world, but let them know if they don't, there's also plan A, plan B, plan C. And that's the way I've always lived as an adult. If one thing don't work out, another one will. And I had someone encouraging me. And that's what's important. These kids need to know that they're wanted. They need to know that they're important, and they need to know that they're valued. So please remember that when you're doing that. And then, my kids also, felt like everybody, our community was, tight knit. Everybody looked out for each other, and that's the way it's supposed to be. We used to say, it takes a village to raise a child. Now you touch somebody's child, guess what? They ready to fight, they ready to shoot, they're ready to do all kind of crazy stuff, which you ain't gonna do nothing for that child if you shoot somebody else or stab them or whatever. You going to jail. I know that. You going to jail. Or you gonna end up dead because they're gonna get you back. So remember, when you're being that example, and I'm only talking about from a Christian standpoint, but I'm using examples of things that has happened because I worked at a jail. I read the affidavits. I've seen people come for silly stuff when you're trying to reason this stuff out logically, it don't make sense. So I'm just my 2 cents for change is from a Christian point of view of what you should do and how you should do it. When you know better, you do better, and that's what I've done. Always look out for your kids too. My parents grew up in a generation where if the adults said something, they were always right. Now, my father said I was a very honest child, but I had a teacher once that I was mad for years, y'all. Because I got in trouble for something she said that I did not do. But because he grew up in a generation where the adult is always right, then of course I got in trouble. And so I, made up in my mind that that was never going to happen to my child, and I write about it in the book, and I understand. So I love my dad. My dad loves me, and I know that they made some mistakes and they didn't realize it. But hey, that's a part of learning. Like I said, parenting does not come with a book, a guidebook that says, or, book of instructions, whatever you want to call it, doesn't come with that. So you have to be careful with these kids. They didn't ask to come here. If you're single and you got them out of wedlock, like I did with my first child, having her out of wedlock, I did it because I wanted to hunch. I was naive about a lot of stuff about life and the consequences of doing that, committing fornication. Guess what? I got a child, but it was a blessing because God don't make mistakes. Even in your sin, he has grace and mercy, but he knew that I was a good parent. I would be a good parent for that child, put it that way. Yes, I made mistakes, but I was the mother that child needed. And it gave me motivation. When she came, I loved on that child the best that I knew how because I was still hurting. Remember that. I didn't tell my parents the mistakes that I felt like, or I didn't tell them the things that I felt until later, which I don't want them to feel bad, but I was just telling them for them to tell, can I talk? So that they would understand that I understand as a parent that you didn't do stuff to hurt me. You did it from what you knew. So for those of you that are hurting, you might need a therapist. I have one that I can recommend. I just don't have her number right here readily available, but her name is Lynne Kelly. She's with the Healing Journey. And if you have some things that you need to get resolved, especially the ones with little kids, if you're listening, you got little kids, you're a single mom, or if you're married, a lot of times when we're married, we're still not healed. It's an individual walk. When we stand before God, your husband's not going to be there. So when you do things, parenting has a huge responsibility. The mothers, you're supposed to nurture the child, and both parents should bring them up in the nurturing and admonition of the Lord. That means you need to know the word to be able to teach the word. You need to be able to, how you going to train them as a Christian if you don't know what God is requiring of you? You need to be able to teach them the fruits of the Spirit so that they can, when somebody squeezes them, that's what comes out. There's different types of sponges. There's the ones that's really, 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 really soft. Those are like, your babes, your young kids. And for the Christian world, those are babes in Christ. And these Christians, us Christians that's been saved a long time, you do the same thing. You point into that sponge. You point into that babe in Christ. So remember, the natural reflects the supernatural or the spiritual world. And so when you're doing things, you're an influencer. Gosh, can I talk, y'all? But you're an influencer. You influence somebody, whether it's negative or positive. So remember that. And so that child, when we go back to the natural, that child needs to know that what you do is the right thing at all times. How you feel, what you do around them, everything influences them, whether you directly tell them that or whether you show them that. And then as they get older, then they become that sponge that's got that bristle on the top side. The harder part for scrubbing pots and pans when you're trying to clean things, and then there's a soft part underneath. That's so when the things of life that comes tough, you've instilled in them everything that they need to handle that. And sometimes they might have to brush that thing off with that hard side, but they still got that soft side underneath. So that's a blessing. But when you parenting gone wrong, it's that Brillo pad that's rough all the way around because they're hurting. Most of the time they're trying to cover themselves up, just protect themselves so nobody gets to them. Not that they're trying to be really, really, really mean, but they've been hurt. And hurt people hurt people. So sometimes it can be protecting themselves, and sometimes they can just be hard, just be mean. I was mean. I was real, real mean, but that's because I was hurting. I had a lot of things that affected me as a child. I had 3 siblings. It was 3 girls, 1 boy. I was the middle daughter, and everybody was light skinned. When we talk about colorism, that affects children too. And I was a dark child, and people would say things like, she's pretty for a dark skinned child. What kind of stuff is that for an adult to say to a child? Either she's pretty or you don't feel she's not. I mean, you don't feel she is. But you don't have to say anything if you don't feel that way. You always want to think about the way God said we are. We're fearfully and wonderfully made. We're beautiful in his eyes. He ain't create no junk. We let other people around us influence us and turn us into that junk because they don't have what it takes to put inside of them. What it takes, that for, they don't have what it takes to give you what you need. I heard T.D. Jakes tell Oprah that one time, and that was powerful. Said your mother couldn't love you the way because she didn't have the capacity to do it. She was like a 10-gallon barrel trying to pour into a 30-gallon. She can't fill you up. And that's true. Sometimes parents are so hurt that they can't do that kind of thing. And so you have to love them in spite of. When the Bible says honor your father and mother, children, it didn't say that if they do right, that you honor them. It didn't say if they do wrong, it just says honor them. That means there's no stipulations that come with that. You do what you're supposed to do to bless God. So even though your parents might have hurt you, you still have to honor them. I'm on the flip side now with the children. I know a lot of children get mad. They mistreat their parents. You're going to be held accountable for that. You're going to be held accountable for that. So parents, pour into children the right way, giving them the love that they need. And when you do that, they'll give you the love that you need in honoring you as they get older. But when you mistreat a child and you make those children feel like they're slaves, you want them to do all the work for you, you should give them chores. You should. You should stop them when they're young. They say spare the rod, spoil the child. Yeah, that's true because it's in the Word, and I believe everything that God has said in His Word. But here's another thing. If you start out young, when you take psychology and sociology and you learn the effects of where a child is placed, the middle child, the oldest child, when you think about how a child feels, when, they psychologically, up until about 6, I think that's what the statistics say, that's the most influenceable years there is. The kids are very, very, they just soaking in everything. So when they're young and they touch something they shouldn't, pop them on the hand. That's what I feel should be done. But you shouldn't be beating a child down. For me and my ancestors, we were beaten into submission. That's not the way you get anybody to do anything. It's taking the time, they did because we didn't want to get beat, but that's a whole nother topic. But for a child, if you're spending time with them and you're talking to them about what they should and should not do, those children will soak that in. And they'll let people, when they squeeze it right back out. But if you beating them down every time they do something, everything is wrong, they always on punishment, that's crazy. Can a child do anything right? Did you do everything right? Don't make a child feel that way. And back to what I was talking about earlier with my father when I got in trouble for an adult saying something. Well, my daughter, that happened to my oldest child. Teacher called me and tried to tell me that she did something wrong. And I said, well, let me speak to her. And so I did. She said, yes, I did it. I said, okay, well, you serve your detention. I'm a fair parent. At least I like to think I am. But my children come on one of these shows and talk about it. So stay tuned for that. But then he called me again like a couple of days later after she finished her detention and started trying to tell me that she did something. And I said, did you do it? She said, no, Mama, I didn't do it, but I know who did it. I'm not a snitch. Well, you know how the rules go with the snitching thing. But I respected her for that because she would tell me stuff. All my children would except for one. They would tell me the things that they did wrong and they tell me the stuff they did right. So I was able to trust that. And I made my decision based on that. But you also have to be prayerful in raising your children because you have some that will deceive you and you buy into the sweetness and everything else and you miss some things. But I know that I was able to catch it later because somebody prophesied on one of my children. And I couldn't see that at the time. Doesn't mean it wasn't true because later I found out it was true. But in spite of all of that, I made sure when it came to the other kids, after I learned that lesson, I paid more attention to all of them so that I can help steer them in the right direction, even after they've taken a slight detour. I bring them back on path. And so, and I don't have to do all that beat down. I know they say that my youngest child, I didn't beat her much. She ain't ever get a whooping. Well, that's because I allow her to talk to me and I explain to her how life works. Like I said earlier, when you know better, you do better. But don't mistreat the child, so to speak, or don't dismiss the child, should I say, when they're telling you something. Because they have valid feelings. And you have to tell them how the world works. If your child is having a problem in school, don't take everything to the teacher and just acting like your child did everything right. Because I'm sure the child don't tell you everything all the time. It depends on how you allow them to come to you. If you always saying, get out of my face, leave me alone, I'm on the phone. Well, you ain't giving the child time. You need time for yourself to hang out with your friends every now and then or do whatever if you're single. But you also need to balance it out with the time you spend with your child. Just buying them nice things, that's not going to do it. You need to, it don't take much. You don't have to have a lot of money. You can buy a little game and just being there playing the game with them or watching a show with them on TV. They love that kind of stuff. Or watching a movie with them. They love that. I know the pandemic, we can't go to the movies right now, but you can watch movies on TV. It's just they have all these streaming apps and different things that you can go to watch movies. But all that kind of stuff is important. Be careful what your children watching too. Yeah, video games, all that kind of stuff considered, it can take a turn for the worse when you're not paying attention to your child. Children are very, very observant, and they can see things and they deduce it to what they think is going on in their little minds or how the world really works. And a lot of that stuff, that reality TV is not reality. And a lot of stuff that happen in movies don't happen that way in real life. And that's what the industry has put out there and projected for the world to think it works that way. And so when it doesn't in the real world, then people do all kind of crazy stuff. They want to hurt themselves. They go crazy. They do a lot of stuff. But as a Christian, we need to make sure that our kids are taught the right things, watching the right things. And even if we watch some things that are questionable, we have to explain to them what God says about that. There's so much on this TV right now that I don't want them to be the parent for my child. I really don't. And thank God my kids are older. And because I did an okay job, I could have done better, but I didn't know as much as I do now. But when I needed them, they came through. I had that heart attack on August 30th, 2014. Now, I understand my youngest daughter didn't come in there to see me when they had me in a coma. I get that. She didn't want to remember mama like that because she didn't know what was going to happen. But I do know that after that, and things started, being a little rough for me at some time, they were there. They were there. They checked on their mama, whatever I needed, they got it, they did it. I am blessed. I am blessed. When you talk about that virtuous woman and your children call you blessed, I'm blessed. Did I do everything right? No. But they could feel the love I had. My kids told me, said, Mama, why won't we do anything for you? We don't mind because all that you did for us, which I did, but I didn't think about it. I just thought about the fact that I want my kids to have a good life. But I didn't want them to think that good life means you can just do anything you want to and you're rewarded for it. It was a balance. I get compliments, but I don't see it. I always think, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. But if you pour out of your heart the love that you have inside and you're trying to walk before God, I didn't have a lot of people coming into my house, because who you're around too can influence your kids. Some people are messy, they pick up on that. Ain't nobody coming around me gossiping. That's not what we're gonna do. I want my kids to know that if somebody else has an issue, I shouldn't be discussing that around my children. If I'm talking to them, and that's who I should be talking to if there's an issue, I'm trying to help encourage them to make it through. But when you got friends that's hanging around you and talking about other people, as though their life is perfect, and it's not. I can tell you that nobody's life is perfect. Then that's a problem. And your kids grow up to do the same thing, and they judging people. Nobody's perfect. Stop judging people. Give your kids the benefit of the doubt. Love them through their flaws. Love them through their mistakes. Allow them to be who they want to be, not trying to live vicariously through your children what you couldn't do while you were young. Don't push that on your child. Let that child decide what they want to be. I can take my son, for instance. I never pushed him to do anything in particular. I always told my children, y'all do what you love to do, and I'm supporting you as long as it's right. And my son, smart, I mean, can do anything he want to do. This child of mine used to get on a computer and research how to fix a computer. Now, when he was really, really young, he used to tear up everything. Oh my God, he was a tear up the VCR, tear up anything, because he wanted to see how it worked. But I missed that. I missed it. I could have steered him in that direction. He could have been a computer analyst, whatever you want to call it. He could have done a lot more. But he still was able to do it on his own, because when he got in middle school, people would bring their computer over to get it fixed, and he would do it. That's how smart he was. I just wish I had done that differently. But then he also was passionate about other things, and he got into it, and I supported him. I went wherever he went in supporting him. He was doing cheerleading. That was something different, and I supported him. And he was good at it, very good at it. Now, you just imagine somebody 6'5", 200-some pounds, and flipping in the air, doing triple fulls, and all those kind of things. I went to those competitions. He has 6 gold rings from competing at Disney Wide World of Sports from the co-ed cheerleading. That's awesome. That is so awesome. I'm amazed at his talent and his smarts and his wits. There's nothing he can do. My oldest daughter, she went on and started playing with makeup, watching YouTube channels, doing all kind of stuff. She didn't do that early on, but she watched me do hair, because I went to cosmetology school, and she was good at that. She had her little extra income in high school, braiding the kids, the neighborhoods, hair and all. And that's what I used to do when I was young. But she went beyond that. That wasn't just satisfying her. She started playing with the makeup. And guess what? She's one of the best makeup artists in Central Florida. I'd say the world, but I'm a little biased. And then my youngest daughter, very professional, has her own businesses. She graduated with honors. I mean, she was focused. And this is when she didn't have any blood. She went to donate blood, and they were saying it wasn't that much blood. She needed a blood transfusion. But she was doing weightlifting, playing flag football, and they discovered that. Then she went through some other things. But guess what? She didn't let that deter her from doing her work. She graduated with an honors diploma. I can't ask for much more. She's a professional. She went with me when I was doing real estate full-time as a little girl. She watched Mama dress up and do her thing. She's good. She could be anything she wants to be. She's still trying to figure it out. She's young, but she has a job. She has many jobs, because she has businesses, and she works at a job where she has a steady paycheck. I'm so proud of her. And then my middle child, who looks like me, she is determined to do whatever she wants to do. She said since she was a little girl, she wanted to be a nurse. And guess what? She's working in that field, and she's, in school to get her RN. She's going to do that. She's always been determined. She's very good at what she does, very kind. I mean, she's smart too. All of my kids are smart. If they make up their mind they want to do something, they can do it. They watch Mama do some things, get certain certifications and certain licenses, and travel and have fun, and they all do that. They all do that. They don't let nothing stop them. My kids got hustle, but that's what they saw me. That's why I say I didn't realize that I gave that to them until they told me that. Say, Mama, we watched you. So my kids ain't ever gonna not work. They're, okay, if I said that right, they're never not gonna be without a job, whether they create it themselves or whether they're working on somebody else's job. and they're going to pay their bills. They're going to handle business. I'm proud of them. But a lot of things that I saw at younger ages, I could have done more with. But guess what? We're here, and I'm proud of where they are, and I see them going even farther in life. And that's what creating a atmosphere of love. We miss some things, but guess what? Doesn't change the destiny of where God wants them to be. My purpose in life is to help other women not go through the things that I've gone through. I put that in the book. I literally died on purpose. That's on Amazon right now. I put all the takeaways from the time that I was born. And then I have a chapter that's called The Big Day, from when I had the heart attack and what I went through. All of those things are mentioned in the book. So if you have any concerns, anything that you need, please feel free to email reverse180women@gmail.com. Any questions you have about parenting. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel, My 2 Cents for Change. And we look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday. And y'all have a great evening.